Hey, this is Susan Blanton with the Create Happy Now podcast, and today I have on my show with me Meghan Gilroy. Meghan mentors soul-led entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers to amplify your inner light, sync up with your soul, and nurture a life of business that uniquely reflects you. Her soul's calling is to gather a tribe of fully shining women leading our world to support each other to be of a deep service to the planet. As a sought-after business mentor, spiritual teacher, and a powerful shamanic healer, she delights in combining her intuitive, spiritually minded talents and hardcore business know-how from building multiple seven-figure businesses. She helps her clients identify how you can share your unique gifts, express your authentic message, and get out there in a way that feels right, makes money, and makes a difference. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Create Happy Now podcast, dedicated to helping you start your journey to discover true happiness. Join me, your host, Susan Blanton, weekly as we explore the transformation stories and words of wisdom from our masters of happiness with tips you can start applying today to create happy now. I have on the show Meghan Gilroy. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad that we finally got together.
I know we did it.
Yay! So what I want to dig right into is you have a kind of a similar story to what I had, not exactly, obviously, but there's a lot of women out there that may really relate to your story, and I was really excited for you to come on and just share with us, kind of how your journey started and how you got to where you are now, and you're serving others and doing retreats and things. So I'm very excited to hear it too.
Yeah, I'm excited to share.
So tell us where you got started. I mean, what was your life like before you discovered this the skill that you had to help others and drive yourself towards helping people have the same discoveries you've had?
So I would say my story started back really high school, college age. I was just one of those really overachiever, people-pleasing perfectionists. Like I wanted to just do everything right. Yeah, you can relate. And, I got a lot of success out of that in terms of getting scholarships and praise and awards and all those kind of things. And when I was in my early 20s, I went through a really huge heartbreak and betrayal and just crazy out of control classroom. So all the ways that I was used to just identifying myself as, a good employee, a good teacher, a good daughter, a good girlfriend, that just really crumbled. And it just felt like the universe hit me over the head with a 2x4 and kind of shook me up to say, well, if you're not all these things, then who are you? And that's what really set me on my spiritual path. And so I had the great pleasure and gift of meeting Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements. I'm sure there's lots of Four Agreement fans out there.
Yes.
And that was really a huge pivot in my life, because I was so used to being goal oriented and mind oriented and go and driven, that it was a real shift into learning how to trust my intuition and learning how to listen to more inner guidance, as opposed to what society might expect of me, or what my parents expected, or what my partner expected. And that's just been a huge ongoing process. I studied with Don Miguel for over a decade, and I got to co-teach with him. Wow. And I eventually ran his business, which was amazing. We got to travel all over the Western Hemisphere. And that really started my path in terms of embracing my shamanic gifts, my shamanic healing abilities, and becoming a spiritual teacher. And at the same time, I was still building businesses. So my husband and I, we actually met through Don Miguel, and we got married 2 weeks after our first date, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, so But it was a great decision, and we ended up building a seven-figure business within a few years.
Wow.
But it wasn't really based on, I would say, our soul passions or our soul purpose. And
Mm,
so we really had that sense of just being on that gerbil wheel and being really tied to one location.
mm.
And we eventually decided to shut the business down, which was a crazy leap of faith. And it was actually pretty scary because I was pregnant at the time. And
You were starting to get really daring.
yeah, so just I feel like that's been a lot of my path, is just like learning how to be bolder and learning how to take those leaps of faith.
Mm-hmm.
So we eventually decided to swap roles, so that I was realizing that, all my little kind of hobby business on the side was something I wanted to share more fully with the world. And I kind of had that aha of, well, if I can create a, construction business using all of these business skills, why can't I apply that to a healing and coaching business? And so that really launched me on that path of understanding online marketing and how do you put together a business that way. And I'm in partnership with Sherry Rosenthal and Wanderlust Entrepreneur. And what I discovered, though, is there's so many online experts who are telling you really that cookie cutter approach of,
Mm.
just follow the system or do it this way and it's going to work out for you. And what I found for myself and for most of my clients who are more soul led, that cookie cutter approach doesn't work. And it was really driving me crazy to see. I'm like, okay, I'm smart and intelligent and successful and intuitive. Like, why can't I put these pieces together in a way that feels like a life work balance, and also that just
Right.
feels like I can trust what's coming through me. I can do it in my unique way. And
Mm-hmm.
so after a lot of shedding and a lot of just exploring, how do I really communicate who I am and what I do, and put that into some form of marketing and the different kind of programs I offer, that now I can really feel like, for my personal brand is fully shining women leading our world.
Mm.
And I feel like the more I've been in tune with who I am, which is that light bearer and light amplifier, and I'm someone who can be a catalyst and a connector and a communicator and a channel, the more I've put that in front of being a business coach or working with clients more strategically, and we really tap into how can you trust your soul purpose, how can you align with your energies, how can you become who you need to be in
Right.
order to run the business you want to run, and not just the how-to part, the more I feel excited. It feels like the ease is there, and when I'm doing, my webinars or programs or offerings, it's like I'm actually energized at the end of it instead of feeling drained. So
Right.
that's kind of a long arc story, but I feel like it's been quite the journey just for me to go from being so outer oriented and success oriented to really redefining what success means to me and how to be more in sync with my own soul.
What were some of the belief shifts that came to you when you, um, from high school being a people pleaser
Hmm.
and results driven, and then when you were discovered, um, you said Don Miguel,
Uh-huh.
yeah, when you met him, how did you meet him, and how did that kind of, what was the catalyst to that moment in time where you
Hmm.
started to, where you met him, you had that opportunity, and then for me, I had some aha epiphanies that came along that
Yeah.
really was a paradigm shift that helped me go in a different direction
Yeah.
than the typical roles and things that we were taught to be.
Yeah, for sure. So I met him because at the time I was part of Teach for America, and I was teaching in inner city Los Angeles and
Okay.
living there. And one of the other teachers at my school was always asking me, to like, do I want to see a crystal? Do I want to, feel the energy in her hands? And I really had very little idea of what she was talking about. But she invited me to go and hear Miguel talk in someone's living room. He was actually at the point where he was still doing very small groups.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, I decided to go and say yes. And when I met him, I was just so struck by his presence and his energy, and it was just so out of what I was used to experiencing that it caught my attention. And I think um, he was really talking about living from that place that's heartfelt and being able to use that intuition and guidance. And for someone who is so used to being goal oriented, for initially I didn't even know what he meant, but because I had gone through that kind of heartbreak and the out of control classroom, I ended up going on a trip to Australia and New Zealand, and that really opened me up energetically. And I went on um, a retreat with him to the pyramids of Mexico, which is now my
Ooh.
spiritual home, which is called Teotihuacan.
Uh-huh.
And that means the place where man awakens to become God. And I think the biggest, at least initially, like the biggest belief that started to crumble was just like me understanding that being a perfectionist was my way of trying to control what was going on in my world. And it was me covering up, really feeling like I wasn't good enough. And that if I didn't do things to get the praise, or if I didn't make everything look perfect,
Mm-hmm.
then somehow there was something wrong with me. And I think when I started realizing, I'm like, oh, this is actually a form of personal importance. If you think you're better than people, or you actually, some people have more of that victim story and they don't think they're as good as people. And when I started untangling that, it really helped me open up to see, okay, every time I've taken that kind of leap of faith, whether it's been marrying my husband, or we've moved across country a couple of times, or opened and closed businesses, there's been something in my heart or soul that's that deeper desire and that
Yeah.
feeling that I want to experience. And when I follow that, what gets delivered to me is like way better than what I could have planned out. And so now when I think back about it, I'm like, if I had followed, if my life had played out kind of the way my mind and the goals I had when I was graduated from college, I'm like, that would have been pretty boring. And now I feel like there's so much more richness in my life, and I feel like I can co-create with whatever you want to call that, the universe or God or goddess or life or love.
Right. Right.
That kind of co-creative relationship is what really excites me, because now I live in Colorado, and my office is looking out across a beautiful mountain view, and we have the most amazing community here. And I have a lot of freedom in my business and my schedule, and make a great income working with other heart-based entrepreneurs, and have a healthy relationship with my husband and with my kids. And it's not to say that I don't have my days of tears and what's wrong and how do we fix this, but I really feel like having that gift of understanding that we all are dreaming our lives, and we have a choice about what we think and how that makes us feel and what we want to attract into our lives. And I think the more I've become attuned to that, the
Right.
more um, I just feel like I'm in that flow space.
Right. I think that when you have two feelings that come along. You have maybe a desire that's inspired, a knowing, an intent, an excitement. That is your connection kind of leaping you in that forward direction. If you're really
Uh-huh.
connected to it, then you're willing to kind of take that leap of faith. But if you let fear come in, that's more of your beliefs holding you back, your
Mm-hmm.
mind, not your alignment.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's kind of the difference as far as trying to feel like when you're trying to make a good decision?
Uh-huh.
Is this making me excited or fearful? Because I believe your higher self is not fearful. It points you in the direction to go,
Yes.
not away. You
Yes,
find
I
that?
agree with that. I find for me, when I feel more open, expansive feelings and it's pleasurable, it's joyful, it's exciting, those are my breadcrumbs to say you're going in the right direction. And if I feel those more kind of constricted, um, like upset tummy or hunched up shoulders, those tighter, tenser feelings, that's usually my like, okay, slow down, pause, check in. And sometimes I do think um, we get gut feelings that are no, like our true no's, and it's just not the right path for us. And sometimes it is more that you need to look at what the beliefs are surrounding this that are holding you back. And I
Right.
just find the more I am attuned to that, like anytime I kind of override the no or I don't listen to my intuition, it usually creates drama and confusion and just, like not a healthy mess. And anytime I've gone with a more intuitive, open feeling, like it may look messy, but it's in a good way and it's in a creative way.
It's really hard though sometimes I think for people to learn if they have a fear come up,
Hmm.
is that a limiting fear or a true inspired direction?
Yeah.
Like it's not a fear, it's a no,
It's an
you should
actual
probably
no,
go
like
this
this is
way.
a roadblock, or I like like if you want to use that word, like the universe
Right.
is saying, like, don't go that way. Yeah, for me, what I tend to do is when I do have that more closed or constricted feeling, I often will check in and just ask like who's talking, and
Mm,
sometimes it's my inner child who wants to like curl up on my lap and express why it's scary to her, or why she doesn't want to be seen or heard, or why she's overwhelmed. And if I take the time to acknowledge her and listen to her, then that often releases that feeling, and then I have the clarity to see, is this really a yes or a no? And other times it might be protector part of myself, or more one of my guides communicating with me. So I think it does take time to really sort through that. And I also feel like when you're willing to tease apart those layers, there's
mhm,
often a part of you that's just like, if you can start learning to trust yourself, and part of that has to do with how you're responding to your emotions,
mhm,
then there's a part of you that's like, when it's really a no and it's a not right direction, like that on some other level or in your gut, and it doesn't feel like the decision is like coming from you like spinning or munching on it in your mind, but there's just like something in like the pit of your belly or the pit of your soul that's like, this is not the direction to go in.
what do you think is some ways in which to learn how to tune in to your gut so that
Hmm.
it's it's a knowing rather
Yeah.
than just a thought?
Yeah. Well, I do feel like every person has different ways of accessing guidance, and so it's starting to pay attention to how that works for you. And so, some people talk about the clairs, like, are you clairvoyant? You see images. Are you clairaudient? You hear messages. Are you
Mhm.
clairsentient? Do you feel or have a gut knowing? And there's some other versions of that. But that's what really helped me, is that initially my mind was like, okay, is this real or not? But I would just pay attention to little things, like if someone was calling me on the phone, I would try to guess who it was and see if it was right. Or if I heard that voice that was giving me direction, I would just pay attention to like, what happens if I listen and what happens if I don't listen. And
Mhm.
so for me, I know when that voice is, that true inner guidance voice is talking, it tends to be insistent. And if I don't say what it's saying, or if I don't follow the directions, it will repeat itself. And eventually I just learn to say like, great, even if this doesn't really make sense to me, I'm going to trust this and let it come through.
Okay.
Right. And go. And really, for most of us, it's only in hindsight that things make sense, right?
Right? Yeah.
So I
It's
know, like when we decided to live here, a huge intent of ours was just really feeling like we had that community and that support system for our children. And ironically, when we moved here, that community didn't exist. And literally within 18 months, all of our closest friends moved here from all over the country. So
whoa.
it's things like that that I'm like, you can't necessarily predict how it's going to happen, but by listening to that nudge that's like, you need to do this. And of
Mhm.
course we had our moments of like, this is crazy and why are we doing this? But now looking back, it's almost like you can plot the points where like, oh right, that was actually synchronicity, and that was a nudge that got us going in the right direction.
Right. And there are times where I've had big moves. The intention was, yes, I want this. I want this. It's scary. It's scary. It's scary. I
Yeah.
want this. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, should I? Should I? Should? But I really want this. oh my gosh, what are people going to say? But I want this. And when that
Uh-huh.
kind of overrides it, that's the inspired,
For
I
sure.
feel.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you have some true heart's desire that you're really sending your intent and energy to, nothing really stops that. If your
Right.
soul, if this is part of your soul path, whether it's going to be, a hit over the head or a gentle whisper or serendipity, it's going to somehow come through and be delivered to you. So a lot of it has to do with, are you willing to surrender? And for me, when I hear the thoughts that are saying, this is crazy, or can you do this, or the more questioning thoughts, a lot of times if I even just say to that part of myself, like, thank you, like, I hear you, I get that this feels uncomfortable, and you know what, we're going to do this anyway. That even not trying to push it aside, not trying to like steamroller ahead, but like bring all of you along on this ride, because we are human and it's normal to have our doubts and fears. But when we can be gentle and compassionate with ourselves and still take those steps forward, and I feel like that's where I've seen so much of my success. Is not that I don't have the doubts, or I don't have the fears, or I don't have the hard days, but it's my ability to manage that part of myself and just say, okay, I get it,
You can stop yourself and go, hold on, let me just,
Mm,
get grounded here a minute. Or that situation isn't going to be like that all the time. This will pass. You can
exactly.
get over. You're not going to spiral into, you know, being upset about, making the doubt bigger. You can kind of stop and go, I can deal with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you can catch that like choice point of saying like, okay, I can either go down that road of what the doubt is asking me to believe, or I can take that breath and say, I want to put my attention here. I want to play the song that's uplifting, or I want to take the
Mhm.
break and walk outside, or I want to eat a snack, or whatever that in the moment could help me realign my energy. I feel like the more I have that choice, and really choice comes from awareness. So if you have to be able to first hear what your mind is
Yes.
saying, and then you need to start making that connection of like, oh, right, when I say this to myself, I feel this way in my body. So, I
Right.
think some people are good at listening and hearing the stories, and other people are good at starting to recognize what's going on with them on that kind of sensation level. And if you
Hmm.
can catch those moments, and then you have a chance to transform them. So
Right.
it's kind of like a multi-step process, and being able to untangle the way all of our minds have just been programmed, and most of us aren't super comfortable with
Right. And I
emotion and
think
how to deal with it.
And I think too, we end up doing a lot of things out of habit and automatic knee jerk
Hmm.
response because that's what we've always done.
Yeah.
There's times where you do something the same way so much, and they're like, "Why am I doing this way?"
Yeah.
And like I could do it so much better. And then you just start listening. Well, what's a better way to do this?
Hmm.
I started to just take a day to just follow whatever I wanted to do. I could be in
I
the
love
middle of
that.
something and then all of a sudden just say, call your mother right now. Or
Hmm.
why don't you just go for a ride in your car and
Yeah.
just, do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it and
Yeah.
follow that direction. And I think when you listen and react to that nudge
Hmm.
over and over, then that connection, that direction is going to get stronger and stronger. I mean, I use it when I lose something. And
Hmm.
the other day, it helped me find something that was not in a logical place. It was
Right.
not at all. I was looking for something, and all of a sudden, I felt this nudge that said, "Look up." And I just glanced up, and it was in a spot I would have never put it
Yeah.
before. I had just accidentally like left it there, and it wasn't anywhere I would have looked.
Yep.
And there it was. And this happened so much. And of course, you have to say, thank you, just
Yeah.
kind of
And to notice
acknowledge.
that, yeah, and like give yourself that pat on the back to reinforce it.
But
I
it's
love
so
that.
much fun, how that's been happening to me lately because I've been doing that a lot.
Hmm.
And it really works. I mean, I think I use it on some books I've lost. I don't know if I lent them out, but it's like all the books that I've been like looking for. I don't know where they're living right now. So I'm gonna
Yeah, you
use
have
it
to
on
check in on that one
that.
for sure.
So tell me what you've got going on right now.
So what I'm super excited about is that we are about to do a 3-day virtual retreat. And I know so many people who are just missing what the live retreats when you can hug people and get together.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also kind of amazed at the virtual model. So it's called Soul Search 2021, using your inner guidance to align your life and your business. And this year, I've just had to get creative about being online. So I've actually done fire ceremonies out in front of my healing space, and vision quests and shamanic journeys and art projects. And so the whole idea behind this retreat is I just feel like there's so many of us who are either exhausted and feel a little worn out from this year, lots of confusion on just how am I pivoting, and just needing that time to catch up and integrate. And then other people actually feel pretty energized and uplifted, and but at the same time they're wanting to take that space to really tune into guidance. So there's that clarity on what is that direction, and what are your goals, and what are the projects, what's your focus for 2021, and how can we let go of the things that we're ready to shed. I'm a big believer in that whole birth, life,
Mm-hmm.
death, rebirth cycle. And
Yeah.
I don't mean that literally, I mean that in terms of like our energy and projects, and just moving through the year. And
Right.
so we're really just going to give ourselves the time and space to, do fire ceremonies and do vision quests, and just spend a couple of days saying, I love what you said about giving yourself that time to do whatever you want. And I know for so many of us, our to-do lists are just so constant and overwhelming that if we don't give ourselves that more spacious time, and that check-in time, and that even that strategic time, then we end up just kind of having blinders on, and we're not really making choices that bring the most possibility and the most excitement to our lives. So we're going to be doing that December 8th through the 10th. And
Okay.
everyone I've been speaking with has just been really excited to work in that more soul guided way. And what I'm finding is that so many people do take kind of how-to programs, whether it's how to market, how to brand, how to create your life. And if you don't really look at who is it that you need to be, and who and what are those messages that are coming through, then it's hard to maintain your energy consistently, and also just have that confidence to tackle whatever next big dream or vision you might have.
Absolutely. And I think too that another piece that people tend to forget during this time is to really take in the current moment, especially if it's something that you really appreciate. Just take it in and really feel it to its fullest,
Hmm.
because we're always thinking about the past, or we're thinking about the future,
Hmm.
instead of right here and right now, because that's where we live, is in the present moment.
Yeah.
And how many times you're going to miss out on those special memories if you don't just sit there and take it in and be fully present.
Yeah, very true. I think that we're oftentimes we're just moving so quickly, we don't give ourselves that chance to kind of catch up and really be truthful about what you're feeling right now, and how you're doing right now. And the more I've found ways to just accept what it is I'm feeling, accept the stage of life I'm in, accept the kind of energetic cycle I'm in, the more I actually give myself those like resting times and follow times, the more that whatever I create next has even more juice and more inspiration and more authenticity.
Right, right. I think that a lot of times we're so hard on ourselves, especially if you are. I'm sure you're like I am. You grew up being a perfectionist, right? That was almost hardwired into you,
Yep.
and you're constantly having to. It's an undercurrent of the operating system you have to
Hmm.
constantly override and give yourself a break.
Yeah, I mean, I joke that I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I
Right.
also I feel like what has really shifted for me, even in just the last few months, is I've really started doing a daily practice where I just roll out of bed, and before I try to interact with anyone else, and I have young kids, so this can be tricky, but I kind of crawl into we have a closet under our stairs. I just sit there and light my candle, and do my meditation. And I really take the moment to orient myself to all my guides and helpers and lineages and my essence at the core, and then to call in the downloads and the guidance. The more I'm listening to that as like my directive, as opposed to like me sitting down and writing out my little to-do list, and the more I'm trusting myself about that, the more I see that I'm like, oh, I can actually be messier about what I'm doing because I'm coming more for that from that energy. And so I know, there's lots of experts who talk about funnels and how you launch and the way you put things out there. And the more I've just shown up and said, hey, this is what's exciting me and this is what I'm thinking about, like who's interested. And I've done that a couple of times now where I don't even have like a buy button or a way to sign up. I mean, even the virtual retreat I told you about, I don't have a sales page up for that yet. But the more I operate in that way, the less I tend to do it in the perfectionist way,
Mm-hmm.
because it just feels good and exciting. And it's okay to have the more messy version and just trust that, people are going to come, people are going
Like a
to.
casual type thing, right? Where it's more
Yeah,
casual.
if it does feel more casual and just less thought out in some ways, it feels more like it's bubbling up in me and people are responding to the energy, and just having like the minimal amount of mechanics or structure in place to,
Right.
obviously you need to market and you need to explain to people what it is that's coming up or what your offerings are. But it feels really good not to feel like so tied into you have to do it some way or it has to look just perfect. And I feel like, there is a gift in perfectionism, right? Like you can present yourself well and you're articulate and things look really beautiful in what you're sharing. So now I try to let that serve what excites me, as opposed to I just have to follow, all these shoulds, or I have to follow exactly the way my mind thinks it needs to look like or happen.
Right. You're doing it out of satisfaction to yourself, not worrying about, okay, if I do it really good, I'm going to get praise. Or if I don't do it really good, someone's going to say something. You're doing
Yeah.
it because you make it to a certain level so that people are enjoying it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have that satisfaction of doing it to that certain degree of skill level that you
Uh-huh.
have, right?
Yeah,
But
I mean,
not
I feel like it's an
overthinking it.
imperative. Like my soul is saying, you are here to be on this planet for a reason and you're here to be of service. So in that kind of stream of energy, that's what's like driving me. And then to be able to use some of the tools I have in terms of understanding marketing or doing things well, that now can serve me, instead of what you're talking about, which is looking towards the outside for the praise, or looking towards like what are the results of this going to
Right.
be, and like feeling like if it's not absolutely perfect then it's going to
Well, you're
fail.
not feeling, yeah, you're not fearing failure anymore. It's more of a experiment or just your own excitement and just your
Yeah.
willingness to want to serve or do things that people are going to enjoy or get
Yeah.
out of or value. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, great. So, what do you have for the listeners today for joining us?
So, if anyone would like to have a guided meditation that really helps you set your intentions every day and prioritize your to-do list, I think one of the things that really helped me shift was really checking in with how I'm feeling each day and what my energy level is, and then looking at, okay, how can I align that with what needs to get done. So
Mm-hmm.
I do have a set your intentions guided meditation. I'm sure you'll have a link for it in the
Yes,
description of
absolutely.
this. And yeah, if you're interested, I know so many people have just gotten a lot of out of having a quick way to
It's a good
get
morning
in
start,
sync.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, great. So, do you have a happy hack for the listeners that they can take home today, maybe try that might lift their spirits or give them the tools to start on their journey to mastering happiness?
Yeah, I would say, years ago, Don Miguel Ruiz actually asked me if I was happy. And when he said that, it kind of took me aback because I wasn't really used to thinking about like, am I happy or not? And for a long time, it actually kind of bothered me because I associated happy with having like a big smile on your face. And so for me, the first step was really just even in defining, like, what does happiness really mean to you? And
Mhm.
for me, happy has more of a contented feeling.
Mhm.
Some people, happiness is like jumping for joy, or other people, happiness,
Euphoria.
yeah, it might be more like a quiet inner buzz, or is it having that big thrill? And so I think when you start tuning into, well, what does that really mean? And more importantly, how does that feel inside of me? That can be kind of like your North Star. We've
Yes.
been talking about how you recognize what that feeling is. And to me, it's like following the breadcrumbs of saying, okay, well, like I enjoy it when I have that harmony feeling in my life and that contented feeling in my life. And if something doesn't have that, then that's like always a place for me to look at. Like I call that an energy leak. Like,
Mhm.
where are places that don't have that in your life? And where's that low hanging fruit of just, oh, right, if my kids are always fighting, could I
Mhm.
look at ways to shift that? Or, if I'm having a constant reoccurring argument with my husband,
Right.
how could I shift that? Or whatever issues are popping up in your life or business, to be able to say, if something's out of energetic alignment with the way I want to feel,
Yeah.
then put some attention on that. And I just find that anytime I really know I have a choice about changing something and I want to make that kind of shift,
Mhm.
then it's like my radar are up, just like when you buy a new car and all of a sudden you see that car everywhere. It's like something
Right.
starts catching your attention to say, oh yeah, someone mentioned an article, or someone said, listen to this podcast,
Mhm.
or, you saw a book in the library, and those answers start coming to you. So just have that faith in that process of, like, you do have the power to change your life. And if you're not happy, it doesn't mean that you have to be, bouncing off the walls all the time.
No, right.
But
Happiness is kind of like a range of anything above satisfaction.
uh-huh,
You're just,
nice.
there's satisfaction, there's dissatisfaction. And
Mm,
so satisfied or just content or just hopeful, joyful,
yeah,
peaceful, all the way up to just, oh my gosh, I'm just having a blast.
yeah,
This is the best thing ever. I'm crying. I'm so happy, kind of
yep,
thing. I mean, you want some ebb and flow, so
right,
you can appreciate the different feelings out there. I
for
mean,
sure.
at least if you don't jump into anger or disappointment, you're not going to stay there. You're going to bounce back to the upper echelon of those feelings, the vibration.
Yeah, and I find the more I've been willing to embrace and look at the anger and the sadness, like, emotion runs on a spectrum. So if
Mhm.
you expand your capacity to feel the uncomfortable emotions, you're also expanding your capacity on the happiness end of the spectrum. And so for me, that's, I guess, the other piece is, like, not trying to pretend I'm happy or to force positivity on myself, but to really say, okay, my emotions are here for a reason. It's trying to let me
Yeah.
know something I'm thinking or believing is out of alignment and not supporting me at the deepest. So let's look at that and work with that, so that that energy can move through me, and then I can have more energy and attention on, okay, what does make me feel content? And I think each of us are different. Like, some of us really like the big highs. My husband's more of an adrenaline junkie, and for me, I like more of the, quiet, calm, peaceful vibe. And that's not to say we both don't enjoy times of that, but just like knowing what makes you happy, what makes you feel really good inside of yourself, and not trying to compare that to what another person might look like, or even for me, what that mental image of happy was. That, it's not just like pasting a smile on your face. There's something much deeper going on.
Right. And I think the thing that really was a shift for me was when I learned that I'm the only person responsible for my happiness,
Hmm.
and I'm not responsible for anybody else's happiness.
Yeah,
And that was huge
yeah.
because then you're creating boundaries, you're loving yourself more, you're also taking personal accountability
Hmm.
for your happiness instead of blaming it on what somebody else is or isn't doing or saying to you or not saying to you. that it's your reaction that
Hmm.
is where it all lives.
That's so true. I mean, every time, if my husband and I have a little upset or something's going on in the world, I'm like, if I let myself have that initial like grumbly, angry, sad, whatever reaction, and I kind of like go a little deeper, it's like, okay, well, there's oftentimes that wish of, I wish you would do this, or I wish you would
Yeah.
change this way. And if I go even deeper than that, there's usually a piece around, okay, this is actually what I'm wanting or asking of myself, whether it's
Yeah.
to acknowledge the feeling or show up in a different way, or be really clear in, this is what really works for me, without an expectation of what somebody else might, they could say yes or no, that they could help out with that. And the more, I think, kind of self-referential I am, while still having that, desire for everyone to be in a positive place, and everyone to, receive whatever I might be able to give. I,
Right.
I feel like I feel like the more I work on myself, the more everything around me kind of sorts itself out.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it? It just feels like there's this more, less drama,
Hmm.
more ease and grace.
Yeah.
Abundance shows up in different ways because you
Yeah.
notice it. You notice it and you appreciate it, and then it flows more, I think. And also, I'm not necessarily attached to certain more outcomes like I used to. I just, it
Yeah.
had to be a certain way. And I
Uh-huh.
let go of that and go, well, maybe something better's out there. Maybe I wasn't supposed to do something this way. Maybe there's something else. And I just have to be patient and look for it and
Yeah.
be aware, right?
I love that. Yeah. Oftentimes I think life delivers way more than our minds can conceive, because our mind really only knows what it's been
Mm-hmm.
trained and domesticated to expect and believe. But if you think about all the possibilities in the universe, I remember when my husband and I got together and we were trying to decide where we were going to move and live, and he's like, well, there's only one way to do this, like there's only one answer. And I'm like, really? Like there's a million answers in the world.
Right.
And I think, we all get in that space of thinking like there's only one way or there's only two ways, and really there's an infinite number of ways to do each and every aspect of our life. And I think the more we can be in tune with, like, here's that desire, my heart's desire of what I want a certain feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and here's some actions I might take to get there, but then to kind of let go to the way that might show up, then you
Yeah.
get fun surprises.
See how it plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have a favorite quote that you live by, Megan?
You know what? The one that kind of plays most often in my head is just that life is messy. It's okay. You are not alone. And
I love
so,
that.
so
I
for
love
for
that.
for me, I think, oftentimes we do have these expectations of, everything should be perfect, or we should be able to control things. And I find like the messiness in life is often the places where it gets juicy and interesting and exciting. And just to
Yeah.
give ourselves that break of like, yeah, you know what, things don't always work out, and that's okay. And then to have the reassurance of, you know what, or if you're still alive, then it's working out okay. You may be in a super hard spot, and I'm not trying to discount the many challenges that we're facing right now, but the more I tell myself, you know what, it's okay, it's going to be okay, that's so soothing, and it really helps kind of calm down my nervous system and keep me in that place of possibility. And then to know that you're not alone. And for me, I've just found the more I can trust in all those kind of unseen helpers that I believe are surrounding us. And
Mm-hmm.
also, for me, I have such great sisterhoods and different circles I'm part of people who are willing to have conversations like you and I are having, or,
Right.
willing to let you be really authentic and
Like
vulnerable,
minded. Mm-hmm.
like-minded. Yeah. So I just feel like, so often when we get in that challenging place, we do feel alone, or we do feel like there's no possibility. And the minute we are willing to kind of show our soft underbellies and ask for help, or ask for support, or just even ask for someone to listen to us,
Yeah.
then that's when the, again, that kind of magic flow starts to happen again.
I think that's another thing probably that we both may have shared from perfectionism is that we were afraid to be vulnerable
Sure.
because that would show
a side of our less perfectness that we've been trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
yes.
I mean, for me, it's been a real delight because I also I think when you study with a teacher, you kind of unconsciously adopt their model. So Don Miguel very much presents himself as a guru, and he doesn't necessarily share a lot of stories from his life or his process. And when I first started teaching, I was kind of mimicking that.
Yeah.
And I started noticing, though, that the more I shared my process and my personal story and my challenges and struggles, the more people were drawn to me and the more women really resonated with that. And so it took a while to feel comfortable with that, but to realize that, oh, for me, my leadership often looks like saying, you know what, I just went through whatever, XYZ, and here's how I sorted myself out. And sometimes, the tears are still coming down my face, and other times, I've had a day or two to process it, and then sometimes it's, reflecting back over a longer time. But that's where I see for me that works, and I know that's not how everyone is configured, but the more open and warm-hearted and vulnerable I am, I think the more I can really connect with people, and you just then are that inspiration of like, okay, life
Right.
isn't perfect and you don't need to be perfect, and here's how we can navigate this together.
Right. Happiness is not perfection, and happiness is embracing your imperfections.
It's true. I was just saying to a friend, they were sharing some story about some like disaster that had happened on a vacation. But they were like so smiling about it, and it was like their favorite memory. And I'm like, isn't that true though? Like, you remember the time
The
when
weird stuff
you were
that
freezing
happened.
cold on the hike and something happened and you found the strength to overcome it. Or I think of our family vacations. It's like, it's not the ones where nothing, everything went without a hitch that we remember. It's the ones where, you know, you almost left the kid at the last rest stop or something, that
Like
like
Home
that's
Alone.
right. Yeah, so, something happened on it that you had to overcome it. And that also kind of brings my, like, gives me like that heart expanded space of like, all right, we do go through hard times, but then if you find a way to come through it stronger or wiser, then you can look back on that and actually look at it with fondness. And so during the time itself, it may not be something that's enjoyable, but it often does bring some more depth or some more happiness in some bizarre way.
I think people get together more closely to when they have endured something together.
Hmm.
Not necessarily like complaining about what's going on, but I help you, you help me, we're in this together,
Hmm.
we'll persevere, we'll get through this, it'll be okay, let's see what we can get out of this.
Yeah.
um and just like this whole year, I mean, there's been people who've really suffered, and there's a lot of people that missed out on seeing family, and or lost family members. And
Hmm.
then there's people on the other opposite spectrum that have grown and explored
Hmm.
and decided to go into a different direction, or sees that this is an opportunity for a lot of changes to be
Yeah.
made, because we're shining light on all the things that just aren't
Not
working.
working. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know when we first moved to this community, we actually had three of the part, three couple within three couples, their partners died, and it was incredibly challenging. And at the
Ah,
same time, everyone here really talks about, like, that's what wove our community together in a way
mm,
that, like, I have chills just talking about that. Like, I feel like it was such a great gift to us, and not that
right.
it wasn't without, I mean, it was so heart-wrenching and so challenging. And yet I see that's why, like, the sister circles came together, and that's why our kids are all like floating amongst each other's houses, and that's why everyone makes like the most delicious meals and drops them off at each other's
That's so
homes if someone's
awesome.
sick. So
Yeah.
I see oftentimes it does take that breakdown or that hard, challenging time to bring the intimacy and bring the closeness
Hmm.
and bring the support. And I know within our circle, all of us have talked about how hard it is to be in that place where you open up to help and you open up to being the one that's messy and needing to fall back on everyone else.
Mhm.
But since that time, there's been divorces and people, moving houses and all sorts of things that have happened. And it's like no one gets through life unscathed. So at some point, if you are in that receivership position, you're also going to come through it and be in that giver position. And the more we can just be open to all of it, I think the more we do find our tribe, we do find our like true selves, and we find our happiness.
Absolutely. And that's perfectly said. Even though, we're trying not to be perfectionists, but that, but that just is so true. I mean, if people could just like listen to that alone today, that is huge. That does something that gives us comfort. It's okay to lean on other people. Um, you do what feels like you need to do. Your soul, if your soul needs rest and needs help and support, ask for it. If you're in a position where you can help, then help. Then serve. It doesn't matter which side you're on. It's okay.
It's true, and it all comes around. I feel like I couldn't have gone on my path without my mentors and my girlfriends and cheerleaders. So
Right.
I still have my days and my times, and they have their days and their times. And to me, when we come from that place of deep support and love and acceptance, it's like it just builds all of us up, and then we can turn around and say, okay, who else needs a hand? Like I've got a little extra. And I think the more I've learned to put myself first and prioritize my own inner happiness and my own inner light, then I'm actually being sourced from something greater than myself, and I can show up for my kids better and my husband and my clients. And now when I think about it, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's no way I could be serving at the level I do without having upped my level of self-care. And for so long, I would put that aside because I just thought I was too busy. And now to me, that's like an actual essential in how I'm living my life.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it has been amazing speaking with you, Meghan. And I just wish you all the best with your upcoming course. And I definitely will be looking into that for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe someday we can collaborate, perhaps. Because that's
good.
something that I've been wanting to do is do some artwork too in with my classes. So
yeah, I've just started doing that this year with one of my groups, and I'm like, why haven't we done this before? Because I come from some artistic architecture background. And I just find that when you add the visuals in and you add that creativity in and you get those kind of like messy visual images and you translate them then into, okay, well, how might that inform social media, or how might that inform my business or my life?
Yeah.
That you get all sorts of surprising answers. And I know my husband and I often do a vision board around the new year, and now looking back on them, I'm like, there's some things on there that at the time we didn't even really totally understand what that image really meant, and then to see it manifest years later, it's really fun. So I do believe the universe works in mysterious ways.
It sure does. It sure does.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Meghan, for joining me today, and I'd love to have you back again in the future. And
love that.
Yes, great. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I hope everyone just shines fully and really finds that way to create some happiness for themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Catch Create Happy Now on YouTube with podcast recordings and additional videos. Look out for Create Happy Now Facebook group, courses, books, and more. If you would like to stay on top of Create Happy Now creations, subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel so you can start your journey to Create Happy Now. You can also find Create Happy Now on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, Stitcher, Deezer, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio.